Alright guys, we're going to look at some problems for your second 9 weeks replacement test review. You can find a copy of these problems in the folder on Schoology, and I will only work out the odds for this video. Alright, let's start with the first problem. The first problem is 50a squared plus 50a over 70a cubed, and it wants me to simplify this. So I'm going to factor out a 50a. That'll leave me a plus 1 over 70a cubed. I can break down 50 into 5 times 10 times a plus 1 over, I can break down 70 into 7 times 10, a times a, and so then the 10's cross out, the a's cross out, and so that leaves me 5, and then in parentheses a plus 1 over 7a squared, and then that would be my answer for the first one. For the second problem, it's simplify again, m minus 6 over m squared minus 36. I can factor the denominator, which is the difference of two squares, into m minus 6, m plus 6. The m minus 6 cross out, and that leaves me 1 over m plus 6. And that was number 3, sorry, not number 2. Got to remember the odds. All right, for number 5, I have n squared plus 3n minus 18 over 7n plus 42. I can factor the numerator into n plus 6, n minus 3, and I can factor out a GCF of 7 in the denominator and leave n plus 6. The n plus 6 is crossed out. That leaves me n minus 3 over 7. All right, the last one for this section, number 7, is b squared minus 8b plus 12 over 3b squared minus 6b. In the numerator, I can factor that trinomial into b minus 6 and b minus 2. In the denominator, I can factor out a GCF of 3b, and that will leave b minus 2. The b minus 2's cross out, and so that leaves me a final answer of b minus 6 over 3b. All right, as we move on to number 9, for number 9 and number 11, it said state the excluded values for 15v minus 3 over 9v plus 6. The excluded value is what makes the denominator equal to 0. So if I take the denominator, 9v plus 6, set equal to 0, and I solve this for v, then I would end up getting v equals negative 6 over 9, which is the same thing as negative 2 over 3. For number 11, notice that I have a trinomial in the numerator and a trinomial in the denominator, but again, excluded values are only concerned about what the denominator values are. So I notice that's a trinomial, so I'm going to factor that into n plus 7, n minus 4. And my excluded values, again, are where it equals to 0, so that would be at negative 7 and positive 4. All right, moving on to number 13. Now, these were the harder problems where I have to solve the equation. So I've got 1 over 2k minus 2 equals 1 over 4k squared minus 4k plus 3k minus 15 over 4k squared minus 4k. All right, notice that in the first fraction, I can take out a GCF of 2, and that will be k minus 1. In the second one, I can take out 4k, and that will leave me k minus 1. And in the last one, I can also take out a 4k, and that will leave me k minus 1. I'm going to multiply by my common denominator, which in this case would be 4k times k minus 1. So I'm going to multiply each one of these fractions by 4k, k minus 1. And it's going to look very busy until after I actually cancel some stuff out, which I'm going to show you that in a second. And so we're not confused, remember there was a 1 here and a 1 there. Okay, now once I've multiplied, I notice that I can cross out that, and also 2 goes into 4 2 times, so that just leaves me 2k. Everything crosses out here except for 1, and everything crosses out here except for 3k minus 15, which leaves me 2k equals 3k minus 14, subtract 3k, so that gives me negative 1k equals negative 14, divide by negative 1, That gives me my final answer of 14. All right, for number 15, it was similar. So I've got 1 over 2 equals r plus 4 over r minus 5 minus 1 over 2r minus 10. Again, I noticed that in the third fraction, I can take out a GCF of 2, leaves me r minus 5. So that lets me notice that my common denominator is 2 times r minus 5, which I'm going to distribute to each one of my fractions, and that's an r plus 4. So r plus 4, and then multiply that by 2, and r minus 5, and then that's a 1, 2, r minus 5. Alright, and then I'm going to see what ones cross out. The 2's cross out here, which leaves me 1r minus 5. The r minus 5's cross out there, which leaves me 2r plus 8. And then here, everything crosses out except for minus 1. So that leaves me 1r minus 5 equals 2r plus 7. I'm going to subtract 1r from both sides, and that'll leave me negative 5 equals r plus 7, and then subtract 7. That gives me negative 12 is equal to r. Alright, moving on to number 17. It wanted me to simplify this expression, 3m over 15m squared n squared plus m minus n over 15m squared n squared. Remember, you can't add or subtract unless they have the same denominator. Thankfully they do. So that gives me 3m plus 1m minus 1n over 15m squared n squared. So that gives me 4m minus n over 15m squared n squared as my answer. For number 19, thankfully, again, they have the same denominator. That's a 6n over 18m minus 6n over 18m. So that gives me m minus 6n minus 6n over 18m, which gives me m minus 12n over 18m. So again, you can only add or subtract if they have the same denominator. Now, if they don't, so case in point like 21, I've got 3k over k plus 4 plus 5 over k minus 6. You have to get a common denominator, which in this case, the common denominator would be k plus 4, k minus 6. K plus 4, k minus 6. Well, what you do now is take the numerator and you multiply by what is missing. So this is missing a k minus 6, and this one's missing a k plus 4. So I'm going to get 3k squared minus 18k plus 5k plus 20 over my common denominator of k plus 4, k minus 6. I combine my like terms and get 3k squared minus 13k plus 20 over k plus 4, k minus 6. All right, for 23, I have 5 over 5n plus 4 over n minus 3. So again, get a common denominator, which in this case would be 5n, n minus 3, 5n, n minus 3, and then multiply the numerators by what's missing. This one's missing an n minus 3, this one's missing a 5n. So I would get 5n minus 15 plus 20n over 5n times n minus 3, and then I would end up getting 5n plus 20, so 25n minus 15 over 5n times n minus 3. And then I notice for 23 that I can reduce. There's a GCF of 5 from the numerator, so that would be 5, that would leave me 5n minus 3 over 5n n minus 3. The 5's cross out, so that leaves me my final answer of 5n minus 3 over n times n minus 3. Alright, for 25, whenever you have a division problem like this, b plus 1 over b minus 1, divided by 10b plus 60 over b squared plus 5b minus 6. Remember to stay, change, flip. So I'm going to leave the first fraction alone, change this multiplication, and then flip the second one. And so that leaves me this. I notice that in my second fraction, the numerator's a trinomial, so I can factor that into b plus 6b minus 1. And in the denominator, I can take out a GCF of 10, and that'll leave me b plus 6. Stuff crosses out, and that leaves me b plus 1 over 10. All right, for 27, it's not a division problem. It's just 10x squared minus 100x over x minus 9 times 3 over 10x squared minus 100x. Thankfully, those two things cross out, and that just leaves me 3 over x minus 9. All right, that takes care of the first test replacement. That takes care of test 5, which involves rational functions. All right, moving on to the second test replacement, test 6, which included radicals. We start off with number 29, which said to graph the square root of x minus 2. Well, I noticed that my range is going to be y is greater than or equal to 0, and my domain is going to be x is greater than or equal to 2. And when I graph this, it moves right 2, so 1, 2. So that's what the picture should look like. For 31, the function is the square root of x minus 1 minus 5. This has went to the right 1 and down 5. So to the right 1 and down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my point. There's the function. My domain will be x is greater than or equal to 1. My range will be y is greater than or equal to negative 5. All right. Now let's move on to some equations. For 33, it wants you to solve the square root of 5n minus 1 equals the square root of 3n plus 1. Whenever you have a square root equal to a square root, you can square both sides, and those cross out, so that leaves me 5n minus 1 equals 3n plus 1. I can subtract 3n from both sides, that'll give me 2n minus 1 is equal to 1. I can add 1 to both sides and get 2n is equal to 2, and then I can divide by 2, and that gives me my final answer of n is equal to 1. For 35, again, I have the square root of n plus 8 equals the square root of 2n plus 11. So again, I can square both sides, and the squares and the square roots cancel out. That leaves me n plus 8 equals 2n plus 11. I can subtract 1n from both sides. That gives me 8 equals 1n plus 11. And then I can subtract 11 from both sides, and it gives me negative 3 for my answer for number 35. For 37, I have negative 4 equals negative 9 plus the square root of negative 7 minus 4x. Well, before I can square both sides, I need to get rid of that negative 9, so I'm going to add 9 to both sides and get 5. So that gives me 5 equals the square root of negative 7 minus 4x. Now that it's by itself, I can square both sides. 5 squared is 25, and the square and square root cancel out, so that leaves me negative 7 minus 4x. I'm going to add 7 to both sides, give me 32 equals negative 4x, and then divide by negative 4. So that gives me an answer of x equals negative 8 for number 37. All right. For 39, I have 21 equals 7 times the square root of 12 minus b. Before I can square both sides, I've got to get rid of that 7, so I divide by 7, and that gives me 3. Now I can square both sides. 3 squares 9, and the square root cancel out. To solve this for b, I subtract 12 and get negative 3, and then divide by negative 1, so that gives me my answer of positive 3 for number 39. All right, for 41, hold on one second. All right, guys, let's pick up with number 41. All right, for 41, I have 3,125 equals n plus 17 to the 5/3. Notice that that's a rational exponent. So the way we get rid of a rational exponent is you do its reciprocal. So I'm going to raise this to the 3/5 and raise this to the 3/5. The reciprocals cancel out, so that leaves me n plus 17. And then using my calculator, 3125 to the 3 over 5 is going to give me 125, and then subtract 17, and then 125 minus 17, that gives me my answer of 108 for number 41. All right, for 43, I've got 17 equals 10 plus 7p to the 1/2. Now, before I do the reciprocal, I've got to subtract 10. That gives me 7, and so now I have the parentheses by itself, and so now I'll do the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 1 over 2 is 2 over 1, and if I plug that in the calculator, 7 to the 2 over 1 is 49, which that crosses out, leaves me 7p. Divide by 7, that gives me my answer of 7 for number 43. All right, for number 45, it just wanted you to rewrite 6x to the 2/3 in radical form, so that would be the cubed root of 6x squared. For 47, it wants you to rewrite k to the 7/6 in radical form, so that would be the 6th root of k to the 7th power. For 49, it wants you to rewrite the square root of 6b to the 5th as a rational exponent, so that would be 6b to the 5/2. And for 51, it wants you to rewrite the square root of k to the 3rd power, so that would be k to the 3/2. All right, for 53, it wants you to solve these exponential equations. So this is moving into test 7 over exponentials. And my problem is 4 to the 2b minus 3 equals 16. Well, you got to get a common base. So the common base will be 4. So I'd have 4 to the 2b minus 3 equals 4 squared. 4's cross out, so that leaves me 2b minus 3 is equal to 2. Add 3, that gives me 2b is equal to 5. Divide by 2, so that gives me b is equal to 5 over 2. All right, for 55, I have 3 to the 2x minus 3 is equal to 3 to the negative 2x plus 3. And thankfully, they're the same base, so they cross out. So 2x minus 3 equals negative 2x plus 3. I'm going to add 2x to both sides. That gives me 4x minus 3 equals 3. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. That gives me 4x is equal to 6. And I'm going to divide by 4. So that gives me 6 over 4, which reduces to 3 over 2. All right, moving on to 57. For 57, I've got 4 to the negative 2n equals 16 to the negative 3n. Get a common base, which will be 4, so 4 to the negative 2n equals 4 squared to the negative 3n. 4's crossed out. That gives me negative 2n equals negative 6n. Ooh, I'm going to add 6n to both sides. That gives me 4n is equal to 0. Divide by 4. That gives my answer for 57 as 0. All right, 59. I've got 64 to the negative 2n equals 16. So I'm going to use 4. So 4 to the 3rd equals negative 2n. 4 to the square is equal to 16. 4's crossed out. That gives me negative 16 is equal to 2. Divide by negative 6. That gives me that n is equal to negative 1/3 for number 59. All right, moving on for the next problem. The next problem is going to be number 60. All right, for 61, it wants you to find the inverse for your function. So my function is h of x equals 3 plus x over 3. To find the inverse, first change h of x equals to y, and then switch the x and the y around. So x is equal to 3 plus y over 3. Now you're going to solve for y, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 3 and get 3x is equal to 3 plus y, and then subtract 3, and so that gives me my inverse function. So my inverse is 3x minus 3. All right, for 63, my function is f of x is equal to 4x minus 3. So again, change the f of x to y, and then switch the x and the y around, and now solve for y. So I'm going to add 3, and then I'm going to divide by 4. So my inverse would be x plus 3 divided by 4, and that will be my inverse function. All right, for the next 4 questions, it wants us to sketch the graph. So I'm going to go ahead and get my graphing calculator out, and it wants us to sketch the graph of the exponential function of y equals 3 times 2 to the x power. So I'm just going to use my graphing calculator to help me do that as soon as it loads up. And so it's loaded up now, and I'm going to just go to my graphing page, and then I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. And so to graph this, I'm just going to type in 3 times 2 rooftop x power, and there is the picture for that graph. So that's number 65. All right, if I move on to 67, it wants me to graph 5 times 2 to the x, and that would be the answer for number 67. For 69, if I go to that and plug that graph in, I would have 4 times, open parentheses, control divide, 1 over 2, close parentheses, rooftop x, and then that would be the graph for number 69. If I go to number 71 is 2 times, open parentheses, control divide, 1 over 2, close parentheses, rooftop x, and that would be the graph for number 71. All right, moving on to 73. 73 and the rest of these problems are for the logarithmic test, which was test 8. So for 73, it just wants you to rewrite log base 289 of 17 equals 1/2 as exponential. Start with the base, that would be 289, jump the fence, power of 1/2, jump the fence back, be 17. For 75, same thing, log base 8 of 2 equals 1/3. So start with the base 8, jump the fence, power of 1/3, jump the fence back, it's equal to 2. Alright, moving on to number 77, it wants you to use a calculator to find the value of log base 4 of 2.4. So I'm actually going to go back to my calculator right quick. So I'm going to go to calculate this time, and it wanted me to find the log base, so log of 4, and then I'm going to go over to 2.4, and then I'm going to hit enter, and that gives me the answer of 0.6315, 0.6135, and that's the answer to number 77, and that's exactly right. Alright, for the next one, for number 79, it wants you to find the value of log base 6 of 25, so I'm going to hit control log, and then I'm going to do 6, and then 25, and that gives me my answer of 1.796. Alright, moving on, let's go ahead and go to number 81. 81. Alright, for 81, it wanted you to expand this logarithm. Log base 3 of 5, the cube root of 12 times 11. So this would be log base 3 of 5 plus log base 3 of 12 over 3 plus log base 3 of 11 over 3. For number 83, it wants you to expand log base 3 of 7 square root of 11 times 10. So that would be log base 3 of 7 plus log base 3 of 11 over 2 plus log base 3 of 10 over 2. Alright, for number 85, it wants you to condense log base 9 of w plus log base 9 of u over 2 plus log base 9 of v over 2. When I condense this, it's going to be log base 9 of w times the square root of u times v. For 87, it wants you to condense 25 log base 4 of u plus 5 log base 4 of v. So this would be log base 4 of u to the 25th times v to the 5th. Alright, moving on to number 89. For 89, I have log base 12 of 7x is equal to 0. This is log equals a number, so we're going to rewrite this as 12 to the 0 equals 7x. 12 to the 0 is 1, divide by 7, so that gives my answer for 89 of 1 over 7. For 91, I have log base 6 of x plus 8 is equal to 3. Log equals number, so rewrite it. 6 to the 3rd equals x plus 8. 6 to the 3rd is 216. 6 to the 3rd is 216. Equals x plus 8. I'm going to subtract 8, and that's going to give me my answer of 208 for number 91. Alright, for 93, I've got log 19 of negative 3x plus 1 equals log 19 of negative 5x minus 3. Log equals log, the logs cross out, so I get negative 3x plus 1 equals negative 5x minus 3. I'm going to add 5x to both sides, get 2x plus 1 equals negative 3. I'm going to subtract 1 and get 2x equals negative 4. I'm going to divide by 2, and that gives me my answer for number 93 of negative 2. Alright, for 95, I have log base 13 of 3x equals log base 13 of 4x minus 6. Again, the logs cross out, so I get 3x equals 4x minus 6. I'm going to subtract 4x, so that gives me negative 1x equals negative 6. Divide by negative 1, so that gives me my answer of x is equal to 6. Alright, for 97, I have log base 4 of 3 plus log base 4 of 3x equals 3. I'm going to condense this log, so I'm going to get log 4 of 9x is equal to 3. This log equals to number, so I'm going to rewrite it as 4 to the third equals 9x. So that would be 64 equals 9x, and then divide by 9. That gives my answer of 64 over 9. All right, for number 99, I've got log base 6 of x minus log base 6 of x minus 5 equal to 2. I'm going to condense this log, so that'll give me x over x minus 5 is equal to 2. Log equals number, so rewrite it. 6 squared equals x over x minus 5. That gives me 36 equals x over x minus 5. Put the 36 over 1. Crisscross, so that gives me 1x equals 36x minus whatever 36 times 5 is, which is 180. Then I'm going to subtract 36x, and so that gives me negative 35x equals negative 180, and then divide by negative 35. So negative 180 divided by negative 35, that gives me 36 over 7, and that was my answer for 99. All right, two more. 101, that's 3 times 15 to the v plus 7 equals 64. First thing I'm going to do is divide by 3, so that gives me 15 to the v plus 7 equals 64 over 3. Then, to make the exponent come down, I'm going to log both sides, so that comes down in front. So I get v plus 7 log 15 equals log 64 over 3. Then I'm going to divide both sides by log of 15, so that leaves me v plus 7. Now, I'm going to type this into my calculator, control divide, control division x, log of 64 over 3 over log of 15. That gives me an answer of 1.13, and then I'm going to subtract 7 from that to get my final answer, which is negative 5.87. And that will be my answer for number 101. All right, last one, 103. I've got 11 to the negative 10x minus 6 is equal to 82. First thing I'm going to do is add 6, so that gives me 11 to the negative 10x equals 88. Now I'm going to log both sides so that the negative 10x comes down. So I have negative 10x log of 11 equals log of 88. Next thing I'm going to do is divide by log of 11. So that gives me negative 10x equals, let me do this right quick, log of 88, log of 88 divided by log of 11, which gives me 1.867. Divide that by negative 10, so that gives me an answer of negative 0.1867. And that is my final answer. All right, guys, study for your replacement exam, and good luck.